Okay, are we ready? Okay, Jake, I'll start with you. What attracted you to the mining industry?
So mining's fascinating, and I'll probably be preaching to the converted here, but it has this unique and incredible way to fuse together multidisciplinary expertise with government and community level stakeholders, but at the same time is overarched by this macroeconomic, what we're all exposed to in macroeconomics. And I think, for me, you take something as scientific and as conceptual as geology, and then you build something very detailed in engineering around it. And then at the same time, you have to interact with communities, governments, politicians to create something which, at a project level, is completely dynamic between every project that we're working on. And then we're exposed to market volatility, geopolitics, and I think there's no other sector out there that has such a broad and diverse range of things which can impact mining. And for me, I think that's why I'm most interested in it. But I think when I first got into mining, it was about the adventure and the mystery of exploration. But what has kept me in mining is the broad spectrum of opportunities which are available. I've started in exploration, went into mining, then into financial advisory, business development, and I think what's great about the industry is that you can do so many different things. You're not stuck in one position. On the flip side, I think, and this is why I'm interested in this discussion today, is that very few young people have been given the opportunity at a young age to understand mining and understand what the opportunities are in the mining sector. And so I think that's why for me, I'm most interested in this. If I was to ask the audience here today, how many people have experienced human resourcing issues on different projects, then I think there'd probably be quite a few hands put up. Yeah. And so, I hope the conversation, the discussion we have today, as well as the work which many of us are doing, and I'm sure other people in the audience are doing to encourage young people to come into mining, I hope that inspires a lot of people to continue that dialogue and see mining for what it really is, for what we can all see mining for.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And Katy, you have a very unconventional path when it comes to the mining industry. So would you mind sharing your background and experience?
Yeah, sure. I think there are a few of us too, actually. We were just catching up at the back about some of our strange, wiggly career paths. But I actually wanted to be a musician and then injured myself and couldn't do music. And probably the best advice I was ever given at a young age, when all my friends were sort of, I want to be a doctor, I have this really clear career that I want to have. I was told, just find something you find interesting. And I thought, what's more interesting than the earth around me? So I ended up studying geology and geophysics, which was awesome. Don't think I was a very good geologist, I've got to be honest. And my old boss might probably agree. But actually then during that time, I got the opportunity to go and work in Liberia as a consultant during my time at university. Which was amazing, and I was mapping where people are and where animals were, and etc. And there was this whole world that I didn't even know was around. I didn't even know existed. This whole area around mining and actually how to make it better. I'd had that preconception that it wasn't really a good thing. So it was really interesting just to take that opportunity, go somewhere different, and grow up very quickly actually as quite a young person at the time. And then I ended up working as a technical consultant, as an environmental consultant then it was AMEC, and now that group, and now part of WSP, who I caught up with earlier. Worked a lot in exploration projects across West Africa, South Africa, across Europe. It was amazing, absolutely brilliant time. But during that, I got actually a bit annoyed with the industry. I got a bit fed up as quite a young person going, we're doing all this amazing work, there's amazing management plans and biodiversity management plans, and nothing's happening. And I actually left the industry because I thought, actually, I want to be able to change this somehow, and I'm quite a small person, don't really understand business that well. So I ended up working in a transformation program, learning about change, and then later on going on working for McKinsey as a management consultant, predominantly doing implementation projects across a whole range of different industries. And my idea there was, what can I learn from all these other places and bring back to mining, which traditionally was quite a stale industry and quite sort of slow to move. And I was back on a mining project with McKinsey, which then made me realize, actually, the industry has moved a lot and it's recognized a lot of the stuff that wasn't great. And now there's this real energy and drive across many mining companies to actually change that. And actually, why not be part of that and be part of making that change? So I joined Anglo American in a job title. I was just saying that I had no idea what meant at the time. And that's been a recurring theme. I tend to take jobs that I don't actually know what they are, because I find having a challenge and something new is great. And actually being able to define that and define your role yourself as well is amazing. And there's so many different opportunities. So now I work in a communications function, but I work with journalists, filmmakers from the BBC, all sorts of diverse people, and then across all of our technical disciplines in Anglo American, and try and help people tell their story in a really simple way and bring people along and truly implement change with a group of 3,000 people who really want to change the industry. And what could be more inspiring than that, and actually just change the world. So it's been a funky journey. I would say it's just taking those opportunities that come across and grabbing them with both hands, and yeah, always being open to saying yes.
Danielle, just before we go to you on the recruitment side, Kat, I think it might be interesting to hear from your experience, just a couple of minutes, just telling us about your journey in mining, because you also have not necessarily a very conventional path, so I think that might be interesting.
Yeah, I suppose what I have approached my career, it's always been quite opportunistic, and I'm always thinking, okay, what don't I know and what's important to know? So I started my career with an idea that I wanted to do finance, but I also really loved rocks. So I didn't realize there was an opportunity to do both at once. And by some internships at uni, I was doing one underground mining in underground nickel mining in Manitoba, and then the next summer would be sitting at BlackRock's offices doing portfolio management on the Golden General Fund. So two quite diverse experiences at the very outset of my career, and I would encourage those at university now to use that time to just try and get as broad a range of experiences as you can to try and establish where you'd really like to go and kind of dedicate more of your time. And yeah, so then I was off exploration in Australia at the start of my career, taking the opportunity from BlackRock, which was like, you need to take advantage of your geology degree and get that technical background so that when you're looking at things through an investment lens, you would have a bit of credibility. So that kind of prompted that move. And then I was doing resource geology because I was collecting data on the ground while I was mapping and logging core and getting knowing what was coming out of the ground, but what do we do with all that data? So the next step was interpolating it all. What is this resource? And then it was like, okay, how much is it worth? And that's why I went back to uni, did a finance master's, and ended up in private equity, investing in projects, which kind of got me into Rio Tinto through their ventures division, which was looking at battery metals. And through a couple of roles, I'm now doing decarbonisation because I recognise it's super important for the industry. It's where the industry is going, and I really was keen to learn more about it. So I guess it's been a portfolio career, whilst always in mining, just trying to explore the full breadth of what opportunities there are within the industry.
Really interesting. And Danielle, you also have an interesting path. Would you mind sharing as well kind of your experience with opportunities that you found professionally and personally in the mining industry?
Absolutely. So in terms of my background, I actually came from real estate, and I transitioned into headhunting for the mining industry because we were at this moment of inflection whereby we were really focusing on what the future of our industry meant. And quite naively, when I was discussing the opportunities with my current employer, I didn't really know much about mining, which isn't that surprising because a lot of the individuals who I speak to don't know anything about mining. And I think it still has this perception that it's destructive and that it pollutes. And actually, when you educate and speak to people about what we are doing and its role within the energy transformation and transition that we're going through, it's possibly the most important part of that journey. And to be part of that and to be part of that change was something that I couldn't turn down. So in terms of how I support our industry, I work as a headhunter in executive search. So I'm really lucky that I work with growing and leading organizations in the industry to support their C-suite, their senior leadership teams, to find the futures that our industry needs today. And it's actually a real privilege, and I'm very proud to be here speaking with you all today, because you are the individuals who can be in these positions in 15 years, 20 years' time, and then leading that next generation of change. And so what I've been able to do and what I've been able to see by speaking with so many influential CEOs and chief operating officers and head of human resources is just the absolute volume and vast amount of opportunities out there within this sector is enormous. And there's so much potential for individuals, whether they are in legal or in finance or in HR, or they want to work in the operations, or they want to support in creating leading safety processes for our industry, if they want to support in strategy and inclusion or support in logistics. There's so many untapped areas that I think that we still need to promote within our industry and discuss. But that's really the opportunities that I keep seeing, and it can take you all around the world. And it's just really exciting. And I think just closing that the people that I meet, it's just a culture where everyone believes in change and everyone's so welcoming.
Sure. Well, Kat, if there are any things you could change about the mining industry, what would it be? Where do we start?
Well, I think it's important to reflect on where the industry has come and know that, I think it's somewhat, wouldn't be really right for me to say, I think this used to happen, this used to happen, I think we've all been on a journey, certainly in the 12 years that I've been part of this industry. I've just seen it evolve, and I think that's down to a huge number of very dedicated professionals who've really tried to, embed that change within their organizations. But I would say, looking forward, what we can do is be more transparent. I think the fact that mining often takes place is it's not sort of just on the outskirts of London, a couple of miles down the M25. It's often in hard to reach places in the Arctic tundra, or in some obscure African, I shouldn't say obscure, but less well-trodden paths in Africa. And the fact that we've got all this modern communication, we can actually shine a light and have a bit more, just be open about, showing what mining operations look like and how we are getting that, how we are getting the minerals out of the ground in a responsible manner. So that transparency, I think, is important, but it also goes beyond just showing them. It's about being transparent with our ESG reporting, with our safety report. I mean, there has been a lot of change in that area as well, but I think we can just do more. And to Katy's point, I mean, the fact that your whole role is about that communications piece and getting the right messages out there, I think is fantastic, and companies like Anglo are doing that really well, and I think we can try and embed all of that across the industry. That would be fantastic. So transparency is a really important point. We can always make the industry more diverse, but I think I'm not just speaking in gender terms. I'm speaking in diversity of experience, backgrounds, thoughts, and particularly for how the industry is progressing in terms of technology. There's a lot of call for data scientists and robot programmers, or I'm not a technical, or at least a software engineer, so I'm not entirely sure, but all I know is big tech are laying off a lot of people at the moment, and there might be some people ripe for this industry that we should try and tap into. So yes, I think those are probably the two main points. So let's try and get more diverse and be more transparent, and that's probably leave it at there.
That's a good start. Katy, do you want to add anything to that, given your role?
I think that point you just landed on, that diversity of thought and experience is hugely important, and our work alongside people who have worked in Formula One, and the mining industry is now actually competing with Google, YouTube, all these other companies that could be quite attractive to young people. I think there's a huge opportunity in mining to really have an impact across the world and in so many different places, as you mentioned. So I just think that diversity is really important, but a diversity in every single sense of it is possible. It is challenging working in the industry. You do have to do a lot of travel, for example, quite often in different roles. And I actually think following the COVID pandemic, a lot of companies have worked out how to make this work a bit better, and that's a really good thing. So it's made it more accessible if you have families or different things. So that's also a really good move if we're going to take a positive out of things. So I think there's been a lot of change in that sense, which is exciting to be part of, actually. So a little bit to add.
And Danielle, just as a recruiter, how do you think we attract talent in the industry?
How do we
Attract the talent, yeah. Have the young professionals coming to our industry.
I think we really need to change the narrative slightly. I have had the privilege of being on so many, or being able to be part of so many of these panels this week, and we have such a great story to tell. And the story here is really about how we are supporting decarbonisation in the energy transition that we're moving forward in. The fact that we are an industry which is focused on technology, which is focused on AI, an industry which is putting ESG, it's so important, ESG, and also geopolitical standpoints, and that these skill sets that we're going to need for the future, we are talking about and we are being present about. And we are really challenging, I think, the historic narrative of maybe what mining used to be. And I think that the way that we need to continue to attract talent into our industry is to continue to promote this journey that we're going on at this moment in time.
And Kat, you founded Young Mining Professional London in 2017. Would you mind just giving a quick talk about how we can support the young professional? I see a lot of young professionals in the in the room today. Just how we can help them.
Yeah, so Young Mind Professionals London was really, it was sparked by my own shyness about walking into a networking room full of, older... Seasoned professionals, and I was like, well, is there a place where there's young people meet in mining? And there wasn't, so it was just filling a gap there, and it started off. It was just kind of friends of friends, friends of friends, colleagues, put the word out, and then it kind of grew from there, snowballed, because we had a great time. It was like, oh, you're in mining too? Like, there's this little secret society of mining-related people in London. London is a big city, but this kind of just kind of made it that little bit smaller. And my view is that often networking opportunities for more senior leaders, people kind of talk at quite a high level, but young people are actually doing the day-to-day work, the nitty-gritty, and so trying to learn off them was a great one of the great results from YMP. And I think it's quite an unintimidating bunch of people, and I think for anyone coming into the industry to know that there's a place or a community that you can try and tap into and go and meet during these events, just it takes away that kind of, it makes us more human, approachable, we're very welcoming, and that's how I want kind of university students to realize that, yeah, this is an industry where you can really build your career and everyone's there to help you do it. We all help each other, right? So it's not Danielle, but Katy, Jake, Bianca, we are, I think we're all great friends, and that's because of YMP, and we've managed to form those connections. And it's just, yeah, so, and I think what's also good about it is the global perspective. So Bianca, I don't know if, sorry, you may have mentioned, but Bianca founded the YMP chapter in Montreal. And Fergus, I can see him sitting at the back. Yeah,
Yes,
so he
perfect.
came to a YMP event in London, and then he moved to Perth and said, well, I'm going to found one here, and it's a super thriving chapter. So, you know, we've got a big footprint now, and it's great because in conference like that, Fergus can come back and say, hey guys, where can we catch you? Like, yeah, we got an event last night. So anyway, what I will say is that there is a community for anyone coming into the industry to become a part of and know that everyone's got your back.
100%.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Jake, just before we go to the Q&A, any tips, advice for young professionals that are either starting their career or considering a career in mining?
Well, I think if you're a young professional and you're listening to this conversation, you're already either convinced or close to being convinced. I think you're already having the right conversations. You know, an important part is networking and hearing from the experienced people in our industry about the experiences that they've had. I think that's where you can get a real perspective on the different opportunities that are available. And I think that's really where I had a lot of value in having some of those conversations earlier in my career. And I think at the same time, you know, what you're looking at today as a career opportunity, I mean, look at us, we've all had very diversified careers since we first started in the industry. And I think that echoes exactly what this sector provides, is plenty of opportunities throughout your career. So yeah, begin having those conversations. I think it's incredibly important. I think the other theme, and I've heard this throughout the week, is that we also need to be trying to engage those people who don't know anything about mining. There is a huge pool of talent out there that if we can reach out to them and we can bring them in to what it is we do, then perhaps there's many more people that we can show exactly who mining is, and we can change that image which we've been talking about. So there's two narratives. There's one, obviously, the people that are here today who are already convinced as to where this sector is going. But the other is then trying to reach out to those who don't know anything about mining.
Yeah, well said. I think that ends on a very good note. And now I want to turn to the audience. If there's anyone that have questions or you have any suggestions for attracting talent, yeah, please just stand up and...
Hi, Bianca. Thank you. Stacey Hope from Women in Mining UK. Thank you, panelists. It was very interesting and very important, the conversation. I guess my question is, how, right? So you have posed it to the audience, but I'd also love to hear from the panelists, how are we attracting others outside of the industry? And I don't even want to say outside, maybe other types of talent that should be a part of the industry. How are we engaging them? Because I think we still have this image that mining is about digging, or mining is about the people in finance or the legal team advocating for indigenous rights. But how do we get young people who are interested in Lego and tech and those little kinetic instruments to think of mining as a way to connect those connectors? So that's my question.
Can I start with a
Yeah,
with a comment on
absolutely,
that?
please.
So interesting. We have this quite a lot in my group in Anglo American, and this year we launched the hydrogen truck. So the first, the world's largest haul truck, which is entirely powered by hydrogen. And doing that, we actually worked with a company called First Mode, and they actually are the guys who built the Mars rover and put that together. So we're working with guys and companies, and they're forming these partnerships with lots of different companies to do completely different things and going, okay, what is the commonality? And the commonality is really trying to solve a problem and bringing bright minds together. And the way we've actually going about that is going, let's talk. Like, the biggest thing is actually talking and that awareness and understanding each other and where your perspectives are from. And that goes from everything from the technical aspects, such as that, as I've spoken about. And some of the work I do, I work with some film companies, and we actually, some of them are going, well, I don't want to work in mining. I don't want to be seen as that, people with strong professional reputations. And then we actually go, okay, let's talk. Let's actually show you what we're doing. Let's show you what the vision is. and get to understand it. And people just go, actually, I never knew that existed. And once you can start showing that happens, that's amazing. We took a photographer who does some incredible photography for NASA to a mine site recently, actually last week in South Africa, in Mahalakwena. And that was really interesting because we're getting a completely different take and view on things and how do you operate in it's a dusty, dirty environment, all these things. And actually, what is it that we do? And it was just, mind was blown. I didn't think that there was all this associated things to do it, all the community work that we do, all of the people involved. So it's really, for me, it's about actually starting that dialogue, having that open door, and showcasing also where there are people working from these different industries and these backgrounds and showing that those possibilities and actually going, we don't identify as a mining company, realistically. It's all about management of natural resources for the future. That's different to going, we dig holes in the ground. So actually how we describe ourselves in industry is really important as well. A few thoughts.
I agree.
My feedback on this is that we need to start early. We need to start talking about mining early, so whether that's we partner with primary schools, high schools, universities, but we need to be having and preparing our talent early. And we will see in our industry over the next 10 years, as we have over the past 10 years, there will be new positions that are going to be created, and there will be adjacent industries which we will have to consider talent from, whether that be at entry level or whether that be at higher management level. We will need to upskill our talent internally, but we will also have to take from adjacent industries. And thus, how do we have those conversations early and map those out early to ensure that we are an industry of choice? Because I think what we're doing is there, the industry is there, the fact that we are making such influential change is here, but the dialogue is so important on how it's positioned, and I still think that we have some way to go with that.
Add there. I think to some extent it's because there may be a bit of a vacuum, and unfortunately when a vacuum is present, it's often filled with the hard-hitting stories, mostly negative. When we think about mining in popular culture, it's always in a bad light. I think even Avatar was based on a really bad mining operation in the space, right? And or blood diamonds, it is all. There hasn't been any positive, popular stories on mining. And to be fair, I think that is something that's present. What sticks in the mind is negative. It's given negative bias is something that everyone kind of knows about. People remember negative stories. But I think what we can do as an industry is to try and meet those negative stories with an overwhelming amount of positive stories. So you get a 10-to-1 balance. So in people's heads, it's a bit more. At least we're positioned a bit more favourably. And we've noodled about how to do that within YMP, and I think Jake, we try to who's telling us, who's saying these bad stories? Let's reach out to them. Let's do the listening. And we had an engagement with I think Mining Network. Was that right? Yeah. And it was very convivial. We want to hear from them, and I think the thing here, we're all trying to solve the same things. People on the outside of the industry saying negative things, and people on the inside of the industry saying, we really want to do things as best as we can. Everyone's in the same direction, but it's kind of pitched a little bit like us versus them. So I think we just need to be transparent and say, everyone within the industry is really at least I can speak for myself. I think I can speak for everyone. I would really hope that everyone in the industry wants to do it in a very good way. Being open to have those conversations, being bold about just talking to anyone who will listen. Yeah, it's got to happen at the grassroots, as you say, primary school, etc.
Yeah, I think throughout the industry, there's a lot of things we do very, very well. And we just need to remember what we are doing well and continue doing those. But at the same time, there is a theme on education at multiple levels, whether that's at a primary education or school education, or just to the general community about how important what we're doing is, and trying to encourage people at a young age to actually think differently to what the status quo says. So seconding what you've all said, we can all see it. So I think it's just getting that narrative out there and continuing doing a lot of the work which we're already doing fantastically well.
And I think just to add, Stacey, to that point, I think we need role model and ambassadors in the industry. I come from a legal background, so I have no background in mining. I didn't grow up in a mining family. I just started my career in law and met some really interesting lawyers that were doing really cool deals in mining, and they shared their passion. And then eventually I joined their mining team. So sometimes it's 2 lawyers, right, that do oil and gas and mining. But when they did mining, I just found it so interesting. And then I shared my passion. So now I go to law firms. I won't be in law firms anymore, but when I was in law firms, I would just be so enthusiastic. I would say to people, there's this networking event, and people would be like, where are you going tonight? I would be like, oh, it's Young Mining Professionals, or Mining for Beers, or I'm actually taking a flight to go to Cape Town because there's a conference in Cape Town. And people just, it's contagious, right? When you have people that are passionate and they love their industry and they share it, I think we just need more of that. You need to see more, not just diversity, but just people that love the industry, that are passionate, and they go out there and they preach for us and not just amongst ourselves. Because today is great, we're telling you what we need to do. But if I go back and I go to a law firm and most people do tech deals, and then I come back and I say, no, but in mining, you need to know what we're doing this, and then it just could become contagious. So I would just share that. I would just say to people, share your passion outside. Don't be shy to share what we've done, the great work we've done, and then kind of convince more people to join that industry, right?
And Bianca, just to also add to that, it's being proud of the industry as well.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of people that I've met, and some of those more seasoned professionals, they're almost apologetic. And it's like, we should not be apologizing for actually something that is going to enable future and enable the world. So actually, people being proud of the industry they work in is really important. So remembering that when you're in this industry as well, to pass that on.
And it's all about the narrative you spin, right? You can spin it the way you want, but I think if you can spin it positively, people will listen. I think we have a few more minutes, so anyone want to ask more questions or? Yeah.
Hi. First of all, great discussion. You all obviously are very knowledgeable about the industry, and I think that you're completely correct. We should be proud of the mining industry, as it really it's a fundamental underpinning for our future. I'm a young guy myself, and my complete lack of beer growth, but yeah, I think that we should have more investment into the mining industry, and that comes in the form of intellectual capital as well. And I approach the mining industry from an investment point of view. I don't actually dig holes myself or do geology or things like that. But what I've seen is a correlation between higher commodity prices and more new people entering the industry. For example, between 2010 and 2020, we've seen more petroleum engineers entering the market when oil prices were higher, and that has dropped off significantly over the past few years. So now that various commodity prices are improving again, are you seeing new interest and perhaps a new inflow of young people now finally becoming more interested in whatever commodity that might be, such as copper or nickel or another commodity?
I can take a first go at that. I think obviously the mining industry, as we know, has a lot of cyclicity. We have these cycles, and I think obviously you go through times where there's a lot more opportunities in our industry and times which there's not. I think what we're seeing now, though, is actually a change in where people actually want to focus in the mining sector. A lot more people are now looking at battery materials, materials which are actually directly contributing to decarbonization, electric vehicles, the energy transition. So I think there is now beginning to be a shift of people actually moving towards subsectors which they find more interesting. But I do think there's that cyclicity which the mining industry has, and when you go through downturns, I think we also need to be able to retain the talent when commodity prices, like you say, aren't as booming as we've all seen them in the past. So retaining that talent during those down dips is just as important as hiring talent when the industry is doing incredibly well.
I don't know if you had a perspective, if you're seeing more people interested.
I think we're seeing, from my perspective and the levels in which I support, that we are seeing far more interest from adjacent industries, which is really important. I think the challenge that we have with, and we say young, but say graduate intakes coming into the industry, is I do still see that there are challenges at university surrounding mine engineering degree programs or metallurgical engineering degree programs, or even giving us the opportunity to discuss mining as a potential industry of choice to individuals and talk about this great work that we are undertaking. So I think it's really important that we each are holding accountability as well to actually reach out to the young population and talk about this as a potential career path. I do think that we will see more individuals come into the industry, but as the pressures of the industry grow, we also are going to have hundreds of thousands of jobs come forward before 2030 as we go through in this change that we're embedding on. So I think at this moment, there is a bit of a balance going on, and I think it's based on geographical location as well. We need to take that into consideration also.
Any more questions?
Okay, we've got this gentleman here.
First of all, thanks. It was a very interesting discussion. Just I guess an open question. Speaking as an Australian, we have an industry group, the AusIMM, and I haven't asked the question of them, and I intend to as a result of this actually. Is there anyone putting together almost like information packages to inform discussions with, like you mentioned, Danielle, very early on in the process, schools, things like that? Is there any... is anyone aware of anyone taking the lead on this in a way that we can get on board with?
Yeah, so there actually in the UK there is a group, and there's actually a few groups. There's the UK Mining Education Forum. There's geocommunication specialists. I guess it's focused more on the geosciences, but there's a bit of a, and I'm not part of it, but I know that it's happening, and perhaps I can put you in contact with someone who does know more. But their focus is to try and raise the profile of geoscience and geological and, by inference, more mining and maybe oil and gas careers. And that's getting a lot more traction. But they're trying to get in at more the grassroots level as well. But Katy, perhaps you have
we're having some discussions with a few of those groups, trying to link up some of the efforts through YMP. So it's something we probably should pick back up on. I think there is definitely a need for a broader educational piece on what is mining as a whole, right? Not going straight into the geology and digging a hole, because actually the proportion of people doing that is very low in the industry. So I think there's definitely a need, and for that really authentic engagement around it as well, and simplifying things and simplifying that into a story of real people would really help. So I think there's definitely a need, there's definitely an opportunity for a number of these groups doing things in isolation to link together. And I think that's a symptom of the industry. We're very good at doing that and very bad at actually all joining forces when everyone wants to do stuff. So it's a really good point, and I hope that we can find the right people to hopefully make it happen. AusIMM would be great. There's great materials out there. Just kind of getting it all together would be sensible. So great shout.
Yeah, I've seen a few smaller groups do similar initiatives. There's one called the GeoBus, which was a small group of people who would go around to the elementary schools, and they were university and master's level students who were trying to encourage children to understand a bit about geology and natural processes, probably earlier in their education than would normally be available to them. But it sounds like what we're talking about here is consolidating that effort and trying to reach out on a wider scale, a more broader scale to younger people. I mean, the Australian market's fantastic. You have many people who are, again, are proud of the industry that they're working in. The mining companies in Western Australia are the top employers. Everybody wants to go and work for the mining companies in Western Australia. So perhaps there's some learnings we can take from you. Maybe you have some ideas about how we can replicate that in Europe. But I think it's a fantastic case study for perhaps what we could be doing better in Europe.
I think that's really good. I'll just wrap it up in a few words, but I'll just say it's also using the technology, because a lot of the young ones now are not reached by going to their university, their school, their high school. It's mostly on TikTok, on Instagram, on other platforms, and how we can do that. So I think, but we're welcome. I see a lot of young professionals in the room. So if you have ideas, if you think you can come up with a solution, or even companies, right? I'm not just looking at the young ones, but even the older ones, just come to us. Like YMP, we're a friendly group. We're always looking to innovate and reach out to more and more people. And I think that's it. That's my 20 seconds up.
I think that brings us to an end of an absolutely fascinating panel. So can we please give a warm round of applause to our fantastic keynote panel? Thank you very much.